Look, I know what people think when they hear about workplace affairs, but you don't understand the whole story. My name's Aaron. I'm 28. And what happened between me and my boss wasn't some cheap fling. It was complicated. And maybe it was exactly what I needed to wake up from the life I was sleepwalking through. I met Isaiah at the salon where I worked as a stylist. He was this plumber who came in to fix our sink, typical blue-collar guy, with his toolbox and work boots. The other girls were all giggling and flirting with him while he worked, but I could tell he was different, not like the usual guys who hit on us at work. He seemed solid, I guess, reliable. When he asked for my number, I almost said no. I mean, a plumber? I had bigger dreams than that. But there was something about the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room. So I gave him my digits, thinking maybe one coffee date wouldn't hurt. Those first few months were actually pretty sweet. Isaiah would pick me up after work, take me to these little diners he knew, tell me stories about his job that were way funnier than they should have been. He wasn't trying to impress me with money or status. He just wanted to spend time with me. It was refreshing. The sex was good too. Not mind-blowing, but consistent. He was attentive, made sure I was satisfied. He'd bring me coffee in bed on weekends, rub my feet after long days at the salon. Looking back, I probably took that for granted. Most guys don't do that stuff. After about 6 months, I started bringing him around my friends. Crystal, my best friend from high school, pulled me aside one night and said, "He's cute, but is this really what you want long-term?" I brushed her off, but the comment stuck with me. Was Isaiah really my type? He was sweet, sure, but he wasn't exactly sophisticated. Still, the relationship worked. We moved in together after a year, got this little apartment that he could actually afford on his plumber salary. I was still doing hair, making decent money, but I started noticing how different our worlds were. His friends were all blue-collar guys who talked about sports and work. My friends were more aspirational, I guess. When he proposed after 2 years, I said yes without hesitation. The ring wasn't huge, but it was pretty, and he'd clearly saved up for it. The wedding was small, just family and close friends at this little venue downtown. Nothing fancy, but it felt right at the time. I thought I was happy. I thought this was what I wanted. The honeymoon phase lasted maybe 6 months after the wedding. Then real life set in, and I started noticing things that bothered me. The way Isaiah would come home, covered in grime from work. How he'd fall asleep on the couch watching TV every night. The fact that our conversations were starting to feel repetitive. Work, bills, what to have for dinner. Don't get me wrong, he was still a good husband. He paid most of the bills. Never complained when I spent money on clothes or salon treatments. He'd still bring me flowers sometimes, just because, but I was starting to feel restless. Like maybe I'd settled too quickly. About a year into our marriage, I got offered a receptionist position at this upscale dental practice downtown. The pay was better than the salon, and I was ready for a change. The salon was getting old. Same gossip. Same drama. Same small-town mentality. My new boss, Brett, was everything Isaiah wasn't. Sophisticated, well-educated, drove a BMW. He was probably in his mid-30s, always dressed in these expensive suits. Had this confidence that just radiated from him. The first day I met him, I felt this little flutter in my stomach that I hadn't felt in months. The office was beautiful, all modern furniture and expensive art on the walls. I felt important working there, like I was finally in a professional environment. Brett treated me with respect, asked for my opinions on office improvements, complimented my organizational skills. It was such a contrast to the salon, where I was just another stylist. Isaiah didn't really get it when I tried to explain how different this job was. He'd ask about my day. But when I'd tell him about the interesting patients or the office dynamics, his eyes would glaze over. He was more interested in telling me about whatever pipe he'd fixed that day. The disconnect was becoming more obvious. Brett started staying late more often. And since I was the receptionist, I'd stay to help him with paperwork or scheduling. We'd talk about everything. Books, movies, places we wanted to travel. He'd been to Europe multiple times, spoke a little French. When I mentioned I'd always wanted to see Paris, he said, "A woman like you should see the world. You're too vibrant to stay in one place forever." No one had ever called me vibrant before. Isaiah thought I was pretty, sure. But Brett saw something more in me. He saw potential. I started putting more effort into my appearance for work. Better makeup, tighter dresses, higher heels. Isaiah noticed and made some comment about me getting all dressed up for the dentist. But he said it like it was cute, not like he was worried. He was so trusting, so naive. The flirting with Brett started innocently enough. He'd compliment my outfit. I'd laugh at his jokes a little too long, when he'd lean over my desk to look at the appointment book. I could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine. Nothing like Isaiah's drugstore deodorant. One evening, we were working late on insurance paperwork, and Brett ordered Chinese food for us. We ate in his office, talking about our lives. He told me about his divorce, how his ex-wife never appreciated his ambition. I found myself telling him things about my marriage that I'd never said out loud, how sometimes I felt like Isaiah and I were living parallel lives instead of building something together. "You're too intelligent to feel unfulfilled," Brett said, looking directly into my eyes. "Life's too short to settle for comfortable when you could have extraordinary." I went home that night feeling more alive than I had in months. Isaiah was already asleep on the couch, still in his work clothes. The TV blaring some stupid action movie? I looked at him lying there and felt nothing. No attraction. No excitement. Just this dull acceptance that this was my life now. The shift happened gradually. Then all at once, Brett and I started texting outside of work, first about office stuff, then about everything else. He'd send me articles he thought I'd find interesting, photos from his weekend trips to wine country. I'd respond with selfies from my boring evenings at home, complaining about Isaiah's lack of ambition. "You deserve someone who challenges you intellectually." Brett texted one night while Isaiah was snoring next to me in bed. "Someone who sees your potential." I knew I was playing with fire, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt desired, not just comfortable. Brett made me feel like I was worth pursuing, worth the risk. The first time we kissed was after a particularly long day at the office. We were alone, going over patient files, and when he handed me a folder, our fingers touched. The electricity was undeniable. He pulled me closer, and I didn't resist. His lips were soft, experienced, nothing like Isaiah's predictable pecs. I've been wanting to do that for months. He whispered against my ear, and I melted. We started meeting for lunch at this little cafe across town where no one would recognize us. Brett would tell me about his travels, his goals, his vision for expanding the practice. He had plans, ambitions, dreams bigger than fixing sinks and watching TV every night. "What do you want from life?" "Aaron," he asked me one afternoon, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Really want, not what you think you should want." I'd never been asked that question before. Isaiah assumed I wanted what he wanted, a simple life, maybe kids eventually, growing old together in our little apartment. But sitting there with Brett, I realized I wanted more. I wanted excitement, sophistication, a partner who could match my intelligence. The first time we slept together was at his condo after work. It was everything my marriage wasn't. Passionate, intense, consuming. Brett knew exactly how to touch me, how to make me feel like the most desirable woman in the world. Afterward, lying in his expensive sheets, I felt more satisfied than I had in years. I started making excuses to stay late at work, telling Isaiah I had extra responsibilities or that Brett needed help with special projects. He never questioned it, just heated up dinner for me and asked how my day went. His trust made it almost too easy. The guilt was minimal. I told myself I deserved this happiness, this excitement. Isaiah was a good man, but he was holding me back from my potential. Brett saw who I really was, who I could become. With him, I felt sophisticated, worldly, alive. We'd text constantly throughout the day. Even when I was at home with Isaiah, Brett would send me photos of expensive restaurants he wanted to take me to, hotels and cities we could visit together. He was planning a future for us, something Isaiah had never really done. "Leave him," Brett whispered one evening as we lay tangled in his sheets. "You're wasting your life with someone who doesn't appreciate what he has." Part of me wanted to. The thought of waking up next to Brett every morning, of being with someone who truly understood me, was intoxicating. But divorce was complicated, messy. I wasn't ready for that drama yet, so I lived this double life, playing the dutiful wife at home while exploring this passionate affair during the day. It was exhausting but exhilarating. I felt like I was finally living instead of just existing. I got careless. After 6 months of sneaking around, I guess I started feeling invincible. Brett and I had been texting more frequently, getting bolder with our messages. He'd send me photos from his morning runs, shirtless and sweaty. I'd respond with pictures from my bath. Nothing too explicit, but definitely suggestive. That Tuesday night, I was in the shower when my phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. I'd left it there, without thinking, something I never would have done in the early days of the affair. Isaiah was in the living room, watching some documentary about World War II, his latest obsession. When I came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around me, Isaiah was standing in the bedroom, holding my phone. His expression was completely still, which was somehow worse than if he'd been yelling. "Who's Brett?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. My stomach dropped, but I tried to play it off. "My boss. You know that. Why are you going through my phone?" It was buzzing, so I picked it up to bring it to you. The message preview was right there on the screen. He held up the phone, showing Brett's latest text. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could have tried to explain it away, could have said it was a misunderstanding. But looking at Isaiah's expression, I knew he'd already seen enough to piece it together. How long? He asked. Isaiah, let me explain. How long? Aaron, 6 months, I whispered. He sat down heavily on the edge of our bed, still holding my phone. 6 months. Christ? He scrolled through more messages, his jaw getting tighter with each one. You've been planning trips together, talking about leaving me. I sat down next to him, trying to touch his arm, but he pulled away. It's not what you think. It's complicated. Complicated? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're sleeping with your boss and making plans to leave your husband. Seems pretty simple to me. Don't be crude. Crude. He stood up, pacing now. My wife is cheating on me and I'm being crude. I watched him move around our bedroom. This man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years, and felt annoyed. Even now, even caught red-handed. He was making this about his hurt feelings, instead of trying to understand why I'd done it. You want to know why? I said, standing up to face him. Because I'm dying here. Isaiah, we're like roommates, not lovers. When's the last time we had a real conversation? When's the last time you surprised me or challenged me or made me feel like I was more than just your comfortable little wife? So you decided to sleep with someone else instead of talking to me about it. Brett understands me. He sees my potential, my intelligence. He wants to build something with me, not just exist. Isaiah stared at me like I was a stranger. 3 years. Aaron, 3 years I've loved you, supported you, tried to make you happy, and you threw it away for some rich guy who's probably married himself. He's divorced, I said automatically, then immediately regretted it. Oh, well that makes it better. He threw my phone on the bed. Pack some things? I need you out of here tonight. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Go to Brett's. Go to Crystal's. Go anywhere but here. I'd never seen Isaiah like this. Cold, decisive. Done. Part of me had expected him to fight for me, to beg me to stay and work it out. This dismissal was almost worse than screaming would have been. We can fix this, I said. But even as the words came out, I wasn't sure I meant them. No, we can't. You made your choice 6 months ago. Now I'm making mine. I stayed at Crystal's that night, crying and explaining the whole situation. She listened without judgment, brought me wine and tissues, let me vent about how Isaiah was being unreasonable and dramatic. Maybe this is for the best, she said around midnight. If you're not happy, you're not happy. Life's too short. The next few days were a blur. I went to work like normal, but everything felt different. Brett was supportive, telling me I'd done the right thing by being open about my feelings, that we could finally be together properly now. He talked about me moving in with him, about taking a trip to celebrate our freedom. But Isaiah wasn't responding to my texts. I'd sent him several messages trying to explain, to make him understand that this wasn't about not loving him. It was about needing more from life. Radio silence. On Friday, I was at the front desk scheduling appointments when I heard shouting from the back of the office. Before I could process what was happening, Isaiah burst through the door to the treatment area, his expression twisted with rage. Where is he? He yelled, scanning the hallway. Sir, you can't be back here, I said, standing up, but he pushed past me like I wasn't even there. Brett emerged from his office, probably hearing the commotion. Can I help you? You're the piece of garbage who's been screwing my wife. Everything happened so fast after that. Isaiah lunged at Brett, tackling him to the ground right there in the hallway. Patients were screaming. The dental hygienist was calling 911, and I was frozen, watching my husband beat the hell out of my lover. Brett tried to fight back, but Isaiah was bigger, stronger, and fueled by months of betrayal and rage. He was hitting him over and over, blood spattering on the pristine white walls of the office. Stop it, I screamed. But Isaiah didn't even look at me. He was completely focused on destroying Brett, punch after punch landing on his face and ribs. It took 3 people to pull Isaiah off Brett, who was unconscious and bleeding heavily on the floor. The cops arrived within minutes, cuffing Isaiah while the paramedics worked on Brett. I rode in the ambulance with Brett, holding his hand while he drifted in and out of consciousness. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Brett was in the hospital with a concussion, broken ribs, and facial fractures. Isaiah was charged with assault and battery. The whole thing made the local news. Plumber attacks dentist in affair triangle. I tried to visit Isaiah in jail, but he refused to see me. His lawyer told me he wasn't interested in any contact. Meanwhile, Brett was recovering but distant. The passionate man who'd whispered about our future together was suddenly talking about complications and needing time to think. The dental office was closed for 2 weeks while they cleaned up and dealt with the media attention. When we reopened, half the patients had canceled their appointments. Nobody wanted to be associated with the affair office. My job became increasingly uncomfortable as coworkers whispered and patients stared. Then Brett dropped the bomb. "I think it's best if you find other employment," he said during what I thought was going to be a romantic dinner. "This whole situation has become too complicated for the practice. You're firing me after everything we've been through." "I'm not firing you. I'm suggesting a transition that would be better for everyone involved." I stared at him across the table. This man I'd risked everything for, and saw him clearly for the first time. He wasn't the sophisticated partner I'd imagined. He was a coward who'd enjoyed the thrill of an affair, but wanted no part of the consequences. "What about us? What about Paris and all those plans you made?" "Aaron, you have to understand. My practice. My reputation. I can't be associated with this kind of drama long term." That's when it hit me. I'd thrown away my marriage, my job, my stability, for a man who was already planning his exit strategy. I'd been so focused on what Brett represented, sophistication, excitement, escape, that I'd never really seen who he was underneath. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Isaiah's lawyer painted me as a cheating wife who'd driven a good man to violence. My lawyer tried to argue that Isaiah's assault proved he was unstable, but the judge wasn't buying it. Isaiah got probation and anger management classes. I got nothing. The house, the car, even the dog, Isaiah kept it all. I'd contributed to our life together. But everything was in his name because he'd been the primary breadwinner. I walked away from 3 years of marriage with my clothes and whatever was left in my personal bank account. Finding a new job was harder than I'd expected. Word travels fast in a small city, and everyone knew about the affair and the assault. Dental offices wouldn't hire me. Salons were hesitant, and even retail managers seemed to know my story. I finally found work at a chain restaurant, serving tables for tips and dealing with the humiliation of former clients, seeing me in a uniform. Crystal let me stay on her couch for a few months, but our friendship was strained. She'd supported my affair initially, but watching the fallout made her uncomfortable. "Maybe you should have tried counseling with Isaiah first," she said one night, and I knew our friendship was over. Brett never called, never texted, never acknowledged that I'd lost everything for him. I'd see his BMW around town sometimes, and he'd look right through me like I was a stranger. The man who'd called me vibrant and intelligent had discarded me the moment I became inconvenient. 2 years later, I'm still serving tables and living in a studio apartment across town. I see Isaiah occasionally. He looks good. Healthy. He's got a new truck and seems to have his life together. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's seeing someone, a nurse at the hospital. They say she's kind, supportive. Everything a man like Isaiah deserves. And Brett, his practice is thriving. He married his dental hygienist 6 months after our affair ended. Turns out he'd been seeing her too. They had a big wedding that made the society pages. I wasn't invited. Looking back, I can admit I made mistakes. Fine. Yeah, I cheated. I destroyed my marriage for a fantasy that was never real. But Isaiah pushed me to it with his complacency, his lack of ambition, his assumption that love was enough. And Brett, he used me and threw me away like I was nothing. The truth is, I'm bitter. I'm angry at Isaiah for being so trusting that he made cheating easy. Angry at Brett for being a liar and a coward. Angry at myself for believing that I deserved more than what I had. But mostly, I'm tired. Tired of pretending this was all some great love story gone wrong. It wasn't. It was just selfish choices and ugly consequences. I don't feel sorry for what I did anymore. I feel sorry that it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. That's the real difference, I guess. I wanted excitement, sophistication, a better life. Instead, I got exactly what I deserved. Nothing.